Hi everyone. So in this video I want to share with you guys a little bit of my personal life journey about how I healed myself from the trauma and the pain that I accumulated during my life, and the exact methods that I used, which I can attest to, which I can tell you work beautifully, and if they can possibly help you and if they resonate with you, then these are things that you can implement and try it in your own life. So I'm deeply passionate, as you guys know, about self-empowerment and about pain, because I know from personal experience and from my profession, I know that pain is the only thing that is stopping you from the relationships, the life, and the experiences that you want, okay? But because pain is so painful, we avoid it at all costs. Of course we do. And a lot of people understand that they need to heal their pain, process their pain, acknowledge the certain traumas that you may have, but people don't understand how to do that. You know, they can recognize it, they can see it, but the minute they kind of connect in with it and feel that pain and acknowledge that pain, it's too scary. And even if you have the courage to kind of stay there, it's like, well, what do I do with it now? Like, I can see this huge big blackness inside of me. How do I transform that? How do I move past that? So I thought perhaps by sharing a little bit of my own journey with you and the methods that I've used, they will be able to help you perhaps implement some of these very, very practical healing modalities that I myself used. So a little bit about my earlier childhood. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old. My mother remarried when she was, not when she was 6, when I was 6. I have an older brother, he's 5 years older than I am. So my very, very young years, kind of like 5 and under, were quite isolated because, as I said, my mom was a single mother. She worked very hard, and she at the time did not have the emotional or mental capacity to kind of be present in my life, which left me kind of to my own devices. My brother, with his own coping mechanisms, kind of turned to anger and bitterness, and he wasn't a great older brother. He wasn't the brother I would have liked, you know. We have these ideologies in our minds about these archetypes, who our siblings should be, who our parents should be. And of course, a lot of the time, and for many people, that doesn't pan out. So my brother was angry. He was really angry, and he took that anger out on me. My biological father was a raging alcoholic. He was highly unstable, most probably bipolar, and he was very much an unsafe human being. He had absolutely no boundaries, so there was a lot of abuse that took place. And my mother, when my mother remarried, my stepfather, her second husband, was the complete opposite in terms of my biological father. You know, he was stable and he had a good job and he was consistent, which was great, but his consistency was in extreme discipline. So there was quite a bit of physical abuse there as well. So my parents were unable to, because, you know, and I'm just going to take a little side step here, we can only give what we are capable of being. We can only give as much love to others as we love ourselves. We can only give as much understanding, empathy, and support as we are able to for ourselves. And everything I'm saying now is, of course, the benefit of hindsight. You know, I can look back over those years and I can understand my parents from a different light. From a professional point of view, from a mature point of view, I can see these things. But obviously, as a younger child, it made no sense to me. It made no sense to me why they were not able to support me, why they allowed the abuse that went on to happen. So my parents' way of coping with life was to clamp down 100%, and they kind of treated me like a robot. You know, I was not allowed any form of emotion. I wasn't allowed an opinion. We were a Catholic family, and from the get-go, I think I was actually born an atheist. But I questioned the religion continuously. I questioned the philosophies that were in the house, the ideologies. And my parents interpreted this as extreme rebellion. Okay, so they didn't encourage my inquisitive mind. They tried everything they could to squash it. So I had various forms of abuse happening from the primary caregivers in my life. And my body was being abused, my mind was being abused, and there was no safe place for me. So not only was all of that going on, but I was constantly under attack for my very being. My thoughts, were not allowed. There was no platform for them to be there. My emotions were constantly questioned. My actions were constantly questioned. So over the years, what happened was I started internalizing this idea that I didn't belong. I didn't fit in anywhere, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Because I said to myself, well, if my mother, my stepfather, my brother, my father, if everyone in my life who was supposed to love me unconditionally, genuinely does not like me, okay, who is telling me on a daily basis that there's something wrong with me, that I'm not allowed to speak, I'm not allowed to feel, I'm not allowed to kind of live, then there must be something wrong with me. So that was the kind of mindset and belief system that I started developing. And unfortunately, there was no outlet for that. There was no safe place that I could go to. There was no person that I could trust. So what I did was I came up with this idea the one day that the world is an unsafe place. There is nobody I can trust. And being the person that I am, and everybody develops a coping mechanism according to their personality. I'm a very fiery person. I'm a very brave person, and the direction that I took was kind of, fuck you, I'm going to do it on my own, and I don't need anyone. So instead of kind of becoming smaller and smaller within the space that I had, within the life that I was being brought up in, I kind of became bigger. Not in a healthy way by any means, but I fought back. But that was the external mask that I put on. The mask that I put on was everything's fine, no one can touch me, I don't need anybody, I'm going to figure this all out on my own. Underneath that was a very, 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 very confused, very sad, and very alone little girl who just genuinely, I look back on those times and I remember that feeling, I remember those thoughts, thinking, what is wrong with me that nobody loves me? So a whole bunch of life happened. It really went downhill. I clashed with them a lot, and I ended up leaving home very, very young, and I went out to do it on my own. So my foundational upbringing in my life was isolated, it was lonely, it was extremely unsupportive, it was really abusive, and I was not brought up with any form of healthy coping mechanisms, okay? So another coping mechanism that I kind of developed was perfection. Okay, so in my mind I thought, okay, well, the world is attacking me. My mother, my father, my brother, everybody is attacking me, and not only physically, but they're attacking the core of my being. They're telling me that I'm not right. So I'm going to become perfect, all right? I'm going to close up every single possible gap in my life, in my physicality, in my every single part of me. Because if I'm perfect, then there is no gap for anyone to kind of get in and to attack me. So I developed this I'm better on my own philosophy, this perfectionism, keep going, keep striving, nothing can stop me, nothing can hurt me. And there was also this underlying anger, this real, and the older I got, the more this anger kind of grew within me I was pissed off. I was like, why? I actually haven't done anything. I haven't done anything to deserve this. And I looked around me and I actually felt genuine resentment for other people. I looked at their families. I looked at them smiling at each other and laughing and connecting and supporting each other. And I felt an intense amount of jealousy. And this kind of underlying poor me attitude, well, why does everybody else have these normal, basic things and I don't? And then, of course, that poor me attitude, beyond that would go to nobody loves me. So that was a script running through my mind through many, 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 many years. Nobody loves me, I am unlovable, and there's no safe place to be. So to cope with that, I developed this perfectionism thing, this really kind of tough exterior attitude, and I kept going with that. But I couldn't deny the truly, truly, truly deep sadness and loneliness that was running through me, because all of us have to belong somewhere. We need to connect with at least one person in the world, and we have to feel like we belong and that we are accepted. And I didn't have those things. So that sadness within me was yearning for some kind of just like that metaphorical, emotional, beautiful, spiritual hug that I desperately needed. But because of my pride, which is a constant large thing in my life, I wouldn't admit that I needed it. But quietly within myself, it was that untouchable need for love and that respect and that regard and that desire for love that kind of pushed me to start the healing process. So what happened with me was that I became a shell. I became this kind of robotic, perfect shell. I had the right facial expressions that were expected from society. I said the right things. I behaved the right way. I would watch other people. I would observe. I felt like a feral child. I felt like I'd been raised in the forest by wolves because I hadn't been taught anything. No one had cared enough to teach me these things, and the models that I had to learn from weren't healthy. So I went out on this mission to kind of make myself fit back into society, okay? So I felt like a complete intruder, and I felt that I needed to learn how to be human, okay? And as I said, so I learned facial expressions. I learned the ability to touch somebody, because earlier touch was really, really difficult for me. If somebody came too close to me, I would flinch, I couldn't make eye contact. So I had to like self-teach myself all of these basic human traits. But what happened with that is it kind of reinforced this idea that I didn't belong. I felt like I was 100% an alien living on planet Earth who had to learn how to operate this kind of physical body. So because of that unhealthy kind of programming, and we know this, it's Psychology 101, I attracted really bad people and I attracted really bad circumstances in my life. And it was carbon copy. I was creating relationships that reflected, the relationships that I'd had with my parents. We know we do this. And I was probably about 18, 19 years old, and I had a complete meltdown. When was it? It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting on the sidewalks outside, and as I said, I'm a very spiritual person, but I don't believe in the big singular God with the big white beard. But that night, I went back to my Catholic upbringing, and I genuinely prayed to God, and I really hoped that there was a God and that He cared enough to hear me, she, because I was so deeply broken. I was so broken, and that fight, because remember, my coping mechanism was to fight, to confront everything. But I was so tired. I was so tired of pretending that it was okay. I was tired of pretending that it didn't affect me. I was tired of pretending that I wasn't deeply hurt, deeply alone, deeply afraid. And that night, after all the tears and the drama had finished, I realized I actually had to do something. And that's when I set out and I went to learn about everything I could about the human being, our bodies, our brains, our emotions, how everything works. Because I had to put myself back together again. I had very, very separate, fractured parts, okay? My mind kind of did this. My emotions were squashed and hidden and completely disconnected from myself because I couldn't feel them. And I recognized that I had all these moving parts that had to be put back together. And so I set out to learn, and that's actually when I discovered metaphysics and I landed up studying that. So, on to the healing methods that I used. So the very, very first step that I took was inner child work. When I learned about inner child work, it resonated with me. I understood the philosophy behind it. Because what happens is that when we experience a large trauma in our lives, we kind of press the pause button. Okay, so we kind of go, whoa, that's too much. I can't cope with that. And we pause it, and then we disconnect from it, okay? But that part of you that is paused doesn't continue developing, all right? It stays exactly where it is until you go back there and you kind of encourage it up. So the inner child work is really going back to all those pause moments in your life, to those moments of traumatic experiences where we have to go back and reintegrate and reconnect and re-love that part of ourselves. So I started off with inner child work. And the first thing I did was I tried to start a conversation with the 5-year-old me, the 10-year-old me. And let me tell you something, I had built such a wall around her, it was almost impossible to speak to her. And I'm talking weeks and weeks, if not months. I would close my eyes, I would meditate. And the vision that I saw in my mind was just this little girl sitting in the corner of a room with her back to me, and she wouldn't even turn around. So that is how deeply I had disconnected from her. I had pretended that everything was okay and ignored her, shut her away, protected her. So weeks and weeks and weeks of extreme patience and extreme love. And while I was doing that process, that anger that I mentioned, kept rising up, and I was angry at that little girl, like, turn around, I'm here now, I'm ready to heal, why aren't you responding to me, And it took me a long time to realize that anger I was showing towards myself was just a product of, I was still reacting to myself the way others had reacted to me. So that was the first deep realization that I had to change the script, I had to change the language and the feeling that I had towards myself. So that is what inner child work is, We have to re-parent ourselves the way we would like to have been parented. And unfortunately, the way we are brought up and the way our parents treat us and our significant others, the way they treat us writes the script for the way we treat ourselves. So I had to get really, really clear about, and I had to get really honest with myself to see the language that I was using towards myself, and it wasn't good. All right, it was angry, it was dominating, there was no empathy, there was no love. And when I learned patience with myself, when I learned to truly love myself, that little girl in my mind turned around, and months later, we managed to actually hug each other. And this is, of course, all a visual meditation that I had in my mind. And that was really, really beautiful. So, but that was the first step. So the first step for me was the inner child work, and I learned and I recognized how I was speaking to myself, and I taught myself how to love myself better, But what that did, because I had purposefully and lovingly brought those walls down that I had used to protect this inner child of mine, all those emotions that I had been disconnected from came flooding back, all of them. And I think I fell apart for a couple of months, because I was blasted. It was like a tornado of, 20 odd years of unfelt emotion. And that was quite hard. And on that note, I need to tell you guys, if you're truly committed, truly committed to transforming yourself, your heart, your mind, your life, it's not an easy road, And it's not like, well, now I'm going to practice self-love and, there I go, I'm soaring off and everything's butterflies and roses. There are going to be many hills that you're going to have to navigate, And there are definitely troughs in those hills, There are valleys that you're going to have to go into. Because remember, we're transforming pain, we're transforming trauma and fear. And those emotions kind of sit in the valley. And as you go in and as you process that, so you come up, and then you've got a few really, really good months, if not years, until you're ready to get to the next level. And then we're going to hit the next valley. So you guys need to be prepared for that. Don't be afraid of that process, So after the connection, and this beautiful connection and relationship that I built with my inner child, I then discovered something called holotropic breath work. And I have to tell you, now I've only did this once, and at the time it was deeply traumatizing for me because I don't think I was ready for it. If I did it now, I would imagine I'd have a magnificent experience. But holotropic breath work, what it does is you do incredibly deep breathing and you kind of go into a trance. And what you're doing is you're accessing the stored memories in your body, and you're allowing your body the space and the opportunity to kind of release those stored emotions. Now, obviously, for me, I had an enormous amount of stuff that I needed to bring up. It was about an 8-hour process. I only found out later it was 8 hours. I mean, I felt like 30 minutes of complete, in a completely different consciousness. But when I finished that workshop, it was a day workshop, I drove home. I literally couldn't speak for about 4 days. It was such a deep release that I just completely closed off, and I needed that quietness for my body to continue processing. After holotropic breath work, after I had recovered, I continued to I kind of moved into the mental aspect of it. I wanted to understand my belief systems. I wanted to understand my mind. And because I had become so aware of the background noise in my life, I was aware of the beliefs that were still kind of carrying on in my lives. And I was also very aware of my relationships, because our outside world, our exterior world, is always an exact reflection, an exact replication of what is going on inside. Okay, so if we're having unhealthy relationships, and at the time I did, if we are just having endless amounts of drama, like just every day the wheels are falling off and there's just crap going on everywhere, it's because our inner world is not at peace. Okay, but it's not a blame situation. All right, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that we can, as I said earlier, we can only give what we are capable of giving. So if we are drained, if we are empty, if we are not full up with love and understanding and acceptance, all right, if instead what we have within ourselves is bitterness and resentment and fear and pain, the world is going to reflect that. Okay, so the next thing I did was belief systems, right? Because I was so aware of what I was attracting, and I did the John Keogh courses, and I did the DeMartinis, and I did all of that so that I could truly understand how my brain worked. And I think it's important that we also approach our healing process from all aspects. Yes, the emotional, that is 100% key, but we also have to intellectually understand it so that we are empowered. So I looked into affirmations. I probably spent a year after my John Keogh course. I spent a year religiously doing affirmations, and I do believe they work, but they don't work in isolation. Okay, so you can't wake up in the morning and go, I am happy, I am peaceful, I have lots of abundance and everything is great in the world, and then that's it, because it's not truth. Okay, you've got to back that up. All right, because if you don't truly feel love, you can say that you feel love to yourself 100 times a day. It's not going to work. So affirmations are a good supportive tool. Okay, I would not say they are the only tool. So after the affirmations and the understanding and the belief systems, and at this time I was studying metaphysics, so it was really interesting for me to use myself as a guinea pig. I really did. I used myself as an experiment of how to heal, of how trauma affects us, how it affects our outer world, our inner world. And it was an enjoyable process, as painful as it was at times, and as difficult as it was at times. I enjoyed the process because I got to know me, and that was something I really wanted to do. And I enjoyed watching how my life started reflecting that change, how better opportunities started coming my way, how better people started coming my way, how I started to grow in my confidence and in my interests, and it was a really cool space in my life. Then I discovered something called family constellations. Okay, now family constellations works on an energetic level. All right, we know that we are all connected energetically, and on a vibrational level. And what it does is it assists the energies to get back into alignment. Okay, now family constellations is a huge topic. I'm going to put links below the video so that you guys can read into that. But I've probably done about 20 constellations in my life, and it's really powerful because you can constellate relationships. The person doesn't even have to be there. The person doesn't even need to be alive. So my biological father died when I was 25 years old, and I won't lie, I felt an enormous amount of relief at his death. But it was easier for me to heal the relationship that I have with him when he wasn't on the planet, as strange as that sounds. It was probably, it was less risky for me, So for family constellations, you can heal, you can constellate the vibrational energies within yourself, which I did a lot of, because remember, I had all those fractured parts. I had this really young inner child. I had this really rebellious but overprotective teenager self. I had this deep lonely person. I had this kind of really capable business person. I had all these fractured parts that I had to put together, and constellations helped me do that. It helped me heal the relationship with my mother, with many relationships. So it's powerful, like I can't even tell you, and you actually don't need to do anything. All you're doing is facilitating how the energy should be, okay? Because when there's a disconnect in relationships within ourselves, the energy can't connect properly. Family constellations kind of makes it happen. Really, really powerful work. I highly recommend it. Then I discovered something called the Enneagram. So the Enneagram is, and I hesitate to say this, okay, it's not like a personality tool, but what it does do is there are 9 points on the Enneagram, and what it does is it helps us understand how people respond to pain and fear. Because we all have a different response mechanism, okay? No human being on this planet escapes the experiences of pain and fear. It is a part of life. But we all respond to it and cope with it in different ways. And what the Enneagram did for me was obviously my own point. I am a counterphobic 6. For anybody who knows the Enneagram, and when you learn about it, you can reference back. So I learned an enormous amount about myself, and a lot of things kind of made sense and started clicking into place for me. And then I learned a lot about other people. And the Enneagram is such a powerful tool that corporations and businesses are starting to implement it within their workspace. That's how amazing it is. Because when we can recognize, our relationships become so much easier when we can disconnect from other people's pain, from other people's drama, and stop taking it so personally. You know, if somebody's having a bad day or they're in a really hard space and they're lashing out, if we can recognize it and not take it on ourselves, then we can be supportive and then we can be loving. But if we take it as a personal attack, what happens? We attack back, and then it just degenerates and it's a nightmare. So the Enneagram, hugely powerful intellectual tool that I would love you guys to do. There are free tests on the internet for you to figure out what point on the Enneagram you are. And as you're reading, you will 100% go, that's my husband, that's my wife, that's my daughter, that's my mother, etc. It'll all start making sense for you. If you want to look deeper into it, there are Enneagram workshops which you can attend and go really into it. And then I discovered my 100% favorite healing modality of all time. And if you guys do nothing else, all right, if you don't do any meditation, any self-reflection, if you only go and do this, it will change your life. Okay, it's called TRE, which stands for Tremor Release Exercise. Sorry, I keep saying that. It's trauma release exercise, and you do it by tremoring. So the premise behind TRE is that, again, we store all of the pain, the history, the trauma, the pain, the fear, everything in our bodies. And what happens is we've primed our bodies to be like this. Okay, I've spoken about this before in my other videos about that flight or fight response. So our actual nervous system is absolutely fried. And we need our nervous system to function optimally if we are to cope with life, okay? Because there is going to be new trauma, there is going to be new pain, new disappointments, new heartache, etc. That is a part of life. And when these things happen to us, we need to have our systems healthy enough to be able to respond accordingly, cope with it, process it, deal with it, and then move on and not carry it with us. So TRE does just that. Firstly, it calms the nervous system after however many years of it being in the hectic flight or fight mode. And then it teaches it how to function again as it should. Okay, again, below the video, I will give you guys details about TRE. It is phenomenal. Like, I can't even tell you. So I was with my ex-husband for 11 years. I met him when I was pretty young, 22. At that time, I just kind of started delving into healing. So you can imagine that he wasn't the healthiest of people, and the relationship was not the healthiest of people. And I found that even after I left him, it probably took me about 2 years post-divorce to learn how to be calm again, because he was such, and is still such, a frantically hectic person that I was always on the back foot, always trying to manage him, making sure that he didn't lose his shit, etc. And those kind of experiences stay with you, and they affect you, and we adapt to it. Now, if you look at that one instance for me, right? Okay, it wasn't one instance, it was 11 years of instances. But if we look at our whole lives, however old you are, we've got all of these things that we had to go through that our bodies adapted to in order to cope, okay? And now we've kind of, fast forward 20 years, 30 years, and we've forgotten who we were before all of that. We've forgotten how we should be, what it feels like to be healthy and to be happy and to not be sucked into the drama. And when I discovered TRE, let me tell you something, I've done so much work, and I will continue to. It's a passion for me. I'll always seek to learn. I'll always seek to uncover a new layer within myself, within society, within the ideas of psychology and what humanity is as a whole, because it really, really interests me. But with TRE, it was a whole new level of calm. It was just amazing. I mean, right now, I'm telling you a little bit about my history, and I'm not feeling any kind of rise of emotion, which is amazing, because I'm telling you now, when life happens to me, and every single day life is happening, I'm a single mom, I've got a ton of things going on, and I just take it on and I deal with it. So TRE, guys, 1,000,000%. If you do nothing else, TRE is the thing that you need to do. So that, guys, is the very shortened, very summarized version of my healing journey and the exact modalities that I used. The links will be below, and I really hope that you go and experiment and explore them and see what resonates with you. As I said initially, every single one of these methods works, and they work on a very powerful, very deep, very transformative level, which is what we want. Okay, psychology is cool, but it's kind of all talking. You got to do the real work, and the real work is getting in there, getting your hands dirty, feeling, looking, examining, and moving forward. So really good luck with that. And I want you to know that I support and I recognize and I celebrate your braveness, because I know how much strength it takes to go within. And your number one tool is love, okay? And start that love with yourself. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon.